The dust rose in columns behind the wagon as Theresa Vance watched three men nail the foreclosure notice to what had been her front door, and she knew with absolute certainty that her entire world had just collapsed beneath her feet. She stood there in the blazing Montana sun, her calico dress stained with honest dirt, her hands still raw from that morning's milking, and felt the weight of every single one of her 24 years pressing down on her shoulders. The farm her father had built from nothing, the land her mother had tended until consumption took her 5 years back, the fields Theresa herself had plowed and planted through 2 hard winters since her father's heart had given out, all of it was gone, just like that. Stolen by men in fine suits who smiled with their mouths but never their eyes. "You have until sundown to collect your personal effects, Miss Vance," the banker's representative said, his voice as cold and flat as a frozen creek. His name was Hargrove, and he had the kind of face that looked like it had never known genuine laughter. After that, any remaining property becomes the legal possession of the Montana Trust and Lending Company. "This is theft," Theresa said, her voice shaking not with fear but with rage that burned hot and bright in her chest. "I made every payment on time, every single one. I have the receipts to prove it." Hargrove's thin lips curved into something that might have been a smile on a more human face. "The bank's records show otherwise. Multiple missed payments over the past 18 months. Really, Miss Vance, you should have been more responsible. A woman alone has no business trying to run a farm anyway. Perhaps you might find work in town. I hear the saloon is always looking for girls." The insult struck her like a physical blow, but Theresa held her ground. She had grown up on this land, had learned to shoot a rifle at 8, could rope a steer better than most men, and had kept this farm running through drought and early frost. She was no delicate flower to wilt under crude suggestions. "I want to see those records," she demanded. "The bank is under no obligation to show you anything. The matter is settled. Good day, Miss Vance." Hargrove tipped his hat, a mockery of courtesy, and climbed back into the wagon with his 2 hired men. Theresa stood there long after the dust had settled, staring at the notice fluttering against the weathered wood. The numbers swam before her eyes. 300 acres. The house. The barn. The livestock. Everything her family had built over 20 years, seized based on falsified records she had no power to dispute. She had seen this happen to the Johnsons last year, then the Pratts. The Montana Trust and Lending Company had been steadily acquiring properties across the territory, and now they had hers. She had no husband to fight for her, no brothers, no father, just herself, and the law did not favor women challenging powerful institutions. The sun was beginning its descent when Theresa finally moved. She walked through the house one last time, touching the table her father had built, the rocker her mother had loved, the simple things that held memories too precious to measure in money. She could take so little. No wagon, no horse. They had already been claimed. She packed a single trunk with her mother's wedding dress, her father's Bible, a few changes of clothing, and the small wooden box that held her real treasures. A tintype of her parents on their wedding day, her mother's silver locket, her father's pocket watch. As the sun touched the horizon, she dragged her trunk to the road and sat on it, looking back at the only home she had ever known. She would not cry. She refused to give them that satisfaction. The sound of hoofbeats made her turn. A rider approached from the east, silhouetted against the dying light. As he drew closer, Theresa could make out a tall man on a paint horse, wearing a battered hat and a duster coat dusty from long travel. He slowed as he neared her, and she got her first good look at his face. He was young, perhaps 28 or 30, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of worn leather. His face was tanned and weathered but handsome in a rugged way, with strong bones and a mouth that looked like it smiled easily, though it was not smiling now. He sat his horse like a man who had spent most of his life in the saddle. "Trouble, madam?" he asked, his voice a low rumble that carried easily in the quiet evening. "Nothing a stranger can fix," Theresa replied, not unkindly. She was too tired for hostility, but also too wary to trust easily. The cowboy's gaze moved from her to the house, to the notice on the door and back to her face. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Foreclosure, based on lies," she said flatly. "But lies written in a bank's ledger carry more weight than an honest woman's word." He dismounted, moving with an easy grace, and walked his horse closer. Now she could see he was even taller than she had thought, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean build of a man who worked hard for his living. He looked at the notice for a long moment, then back at her. "Where are you headed?" "I have no idea," Theresa admitted. The words tasted bitter. "Town, I suppose, to look for work." She would not end up in a saloon no matter what. She would scrub floors, take in laundry, anything honest. The cowboy was quiet for a moment, studying her with those steady brown eyes. Then he said something that changed everything. "My name is Owen Pierce. I have a ranch about 15 miles west of here, near the Jefferson River. Been running it alone for 3 years, but it is more land than one man needs or can properly work. I could use help, if you are willing to work for wages and a place to stay." Theresa stared at him. "You do not know me. I know you have been done wrong by people who should have been trustworthy. I know you are sitting on a trunk by the side of the road with nowhere to go. I know you have the look of someone who knows hard work." He paused. "I am not offering charity. I need help with the ranch. You would earn your keep. There is a separate cabin you could have. It is not much, but it is sound and has a good stove." "Why would you help me?" Suspicion warred with desperate hope in her chest. Owen Pierce looked back at the house, then met her eyes again. "5 years ago, my family had a ranch in Wyoming. Bankers took it with the same kind of tricks. My father fought them and ended up dead for his trouble. They called it an accident, but I know better. My mother did not last 6 months after that. I made my way here and started over, but I remember what it feels like to have everything stolen by men in fine suits." His jaw tightened. "I cannot fix what happened to you today, but I can offer you a chance to start over. What you make of it is up to you." Theresa searched his face for any sign of deception or ulterior motive. She had learned to read people well, growing up in a territory where your neighbors might save your life or rob you blind depending on their character. What she saw in Owen Pierce's eyes was honest anger at injustice and a genuine offer of help. "I am a hard worker," she said quietly. "I know farming and ranching. I can cook, manage livestock, mend fences. I will earn whatever you pay me." "I do not doubt it." He gestured to her trunk. "Let me load that. It is too far to walk before full dark, and you can ride behind me if you do not mind sharing the saddle." As the last light faded from the sky, Theresa took one final look at her family's farm, committing every detail to memory. Then she let Owen Pierce help her onto his horse, settling behind the saddle with her arms carefully around his waist for balance. The paint horse moved into an easy walk, carrying them west into the gathering darkness. They rode in silence for the first hour. Theresa was acutely aware of the warmth of the man in front of her, the steady rhythm of the horse beneath them, the vast Montana sky spreading out overhead with more stars than seemed possible. The night air grew cold, and she found herself grateful for the shelter of Owen's broad back blocking the wind. "Tell me about your ranch," she said finally, needing to break the silence. "It is about 400 acres along the Jefferson River," Owen replied, his voice carrying back to her easily. Good water, decent grazing. I run about 200 head of cattle, some horses. Built the main house myself, and there is a smaller cabin that the previous owner used for his hired hand. That is where you would stay. The land is beautiful, though it can be hard. Winters are rough, but nothing you have not seen before if you have been farming here. What kind of help do you need? Everything, if I am honest. Tending cattle, mending fences, helping with the spring branding, managing the garden, preserving food for winter. I have been doing it alone, but it is too much for one person. I lose too many cattle because I cannot be everywhere at once. A good hand would make all the difference. He paused. And before you ask, yes, I meant what I said about fair wages. Room and board plus $30 a month, more during branding and roundup season. $30 a month was generous, more than fair for hired help. Theresa felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. That is very generous. It is what the work is worth. She could hear the shrug in his voice. I believe in honest dealing. You work hard, you get paid fairly. Simple as that. They fell silent again, but it was a more comfortable silence now. Theresa found her exhaustion catching up with her, the warmth and steady movement of the horse making her drowsy despite everything. She forced herself to stay alert, but it was a battle. You can sleep if you need to, Owen said, as if reading her thoughts. I will make sure you do not fall. We have another hour yet. I am fine, Theresa insisted, but even she could hear how tired she sounded. Suit yourself. But the offer stands. The moon had risen high by the time they crested a ridge, and Owen pointed ahead. There. That is home. Theresa looked down into a broad valley carved by the river, silver in the moonlight. She could make out the dark shapes of buildings, the lighter patches of fenced pastures, the glint of water. It looked peaceful, settled, real. It is beautiful, she said softly. It is a good piece of land. Took me 2 years to save enough to buy it, another year to build the house and get the herd started. Still building, really. Always something that needs doing. He guided the horse down the slope. But it is mine, free and clear. No mortgage, no banker breathing down my neck. I learned that lesson from what happened to my family. They reached the ranch proper, and Owen dismounted first, then helped Theresa down. Her legs were stiff from the long ride, and she stumbled slightly. His hand steadied her, strong and sure. Easy. Get your balance. He kept hold of her arm until she was steady. Let me show you the cabin. We can deal with everything else in the morning. He lit a lantern and led her to a small building set about 50 yards from the main house. It was simple but well built, single room with a bed, table, 2 chairs, and a good iron stove. Someone had left firewood stacked neatly by the hearth. It is not fancy, but it is clean and tight. No leaks, good chimney. Bedding should be in that chest. Owen set her trunk down near the bed. I will bring fresh water in the morning, but there is a pitcher there if you need it tonight. Outhouse is behind the main barn. My house is the larger building, if you need anything. Theresa looked around the small cabin and felt something tight in her chest begin to ease. It was not her family's farmhouse, but it was shelter, honestly offered, a place to sleep safely. A fresh start. Thank you, she said, and meant it with everything in her. I will not let you down, Mr. Pierce. Owen, he corrected gently. We will be working together. Might as well use given names. And I am not worried. I am a fair judge of character, and I think you will work out just fine, Theresa. He tipped his hat. Sleep well. I will knock around dawn and we can get you oriented to how things work around here. After he left, Theresa lit the stove to chase away the chill and made up the bed with the clean sheets she found in the chest. She changed into her nightdress, said her prayers, and lay down on a mattress that was not hers in a cabin that was not home, on land owned by a man she had met only hours before. But she was not on the street. She had work and wages and a roof over her head. It was more than she had expected when she had sat on her trunk watching the sun set on everything she had known. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, a new life to learn. But tonight, she was safe. She fell asleep with that thought, and did not wake until the sound of Owen's knock came with the dawn. The next weeks passed in a blur of hard work and learning. Theresa had not lied about her abilities. She rose before dawn, worked until after sunset, and threw herself into ranch life with the determination of someone who had everything to prove and nothing to lose. Owen was a patient teacher and a fair boss. He showed her the boundaries of the ranch, introduced her to the rhythms of cattle management, and taught her the particular quirks of his operation. She, in turn, brought skills he had not expected. Her garden knowledge transformed the struggling vegetable plot behind the main house into neat, productive rows. Her talent with mending and sewing saved equipment he would have replaced. Her cooking, which she insisted on providing in exchange for using his larger kitchen, was leagues better than the simple bachelor fare he had been living on. They fell into an easy partnership. Owen handled the heavier work, the riding and roping and fence repair that required pure physical strength. Theresa managed the garden, the food preservation, the care of the chickens and milk cow Owen acquired a week after she arrived. But they worked together more often than not, and Theresa found herself learning things she had never had the chance to master on her father's farm. Owen taught her to throw a rope properly, to read the signs that meant cattle trouble, to judge horse flesh and weather with equal skill. In turn, she taught him the finer points of preserving food, the kitchen chemistry their mothers had known but few men learned. She showed him how to make the budget stretch further with careful planning, how to turn simple ingredients into meals that stuck to the ribs and satisfied the soul. They talked while they worked, conversations that ranged from the practical to the personal. Owen told her about growing up in Wyoming, about his parents and the brother who had died of fever when Owen was 16. He spoke of his grief over losing the family ranch, and his determination to build something that could never be taken away. Theresa found herself sharing things she had told no one. The loneliness of running the farm alone after her father died. The fear that had haunted her every time she went to make a payment, wondering if this would be the time the bank decided to take everything. The helpless rage of watching it happen exactly as she had feared, with no recourse and no justice. "I used to think hard work and honest dealing were enough," she said one afternoon as they mended fence line together. The Montana summer was in full force, hot and bright. "My father believed that. Work hard, pay your debts, treat people fairly, and you will be all right. But it is not true, is it? They took everything anyway." Owen hammered in a fence post with controlled strength. "Hard work is not enough when you are dealing with people who have no honor. My father believed the same thing. Got him killed." He straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But I do not think that means we should stop living that way. It means we have to be smarter, harder to cheat, more careful about who we trust." "You trust anyone?" Theresa asked, genuinely curious. He looked at her directly, his brown eyes serious. "I am learning to. You have been here almost a month and you have proven yourself 10 times over. You work as hard as you claimed, you are honest, and you pull your weight. That is worth something. Worth a lot, actually." The approval in his voice warmed her in a way that had nothing to do with the summer sun. Over the past weeks, she had begun to notice things about Owen Pierce that had nothing to do with his skills as a rancher. The way he moved with unconscious grace, the rare smile that transformed his serious face, the gentle patience he showed with the animals, the absolute fairness with which he treated her, never condescending, never presuming, always respectful. She had not expected to find herself attracted to him, had not planned on feeling her heart lift when she heard his voice in the morning or noticed the way her gaze followed him when he worked. It was dangerous territory, letting herself feel anything beyond gratitude and professional respect. He was her employer, her benefactor. She could not risk complicating that by developing feelings he might not return, but her heart seemed to have its own ideas. One evening in late July, as they sat on the porch of the main house after supper, watching the sun paint the mountains gold and crimson, Owen said something that caught her completely off guard. "I have been thinking about expansion." Theresa looked over at him. "What kind of expansion?" "There is land available bordering the north edge of my property. 300 acres, good grazing, includes about a mile of river frontage. The owner is moving back east, wants to sell quickly. The price is fair." He paused, staring out at the darkening landscape. "I could make it work financially, but it would be tight, and I could not manage that much land alone, even with your help." "What are you considering?" "Hiring another hand. Maybe two, at least during the busy seasons, building up the herd more. It would be a risk, but the potential is there. With proper management, we could double the operation in 3 years." He glanced at her. "But I wanted to know what you think before I made any decisions." Theresa blinked. "What I think? Owen, this is your ranch, and you are my partner in running it, whether we have called it that or not. You have as much invested in making this place work as I do now. Your opinion matters." He shifted to face her more directly. "If I take on more land and more hands, your job changes. More cooking, more management, more of everything. It would mean harder work, but I would increase your wages to match. 20% share of the profits beyond what I need to reinvest in the ranch." She stared at him. "That is more than generous. That is partnership." "Exactly." His expression was serious. "I have been thinking about this for a while now, Theresa. You are not just hired help. You are the reason this ranch runs as well as it does. You deserve to benefit from that." Emotion swelled in her throat. 6 weeks ago, she had lost everything. Now she was being offered not just employment but genuine partnership in a growing operation. It was more than she had dared hope for. "The land purchase makes sense if you can afford it," she said, forcing herself to think practically. "The river frontage alone is worth the price, and you are right about the grazing potential. With 2 good hands we could manage it, but you would need to be careful about who you hire. Character matters more than experience." Owen nodded slowly. "Agreed. I will not bring anyone onto this ranch who cannot be trusted. We have built something good here. I will not risk it on questionable people." "Then I think you should do it," Theresa said firmly. "It is a smart investment, and I will do whatever is needed to make it work." The smile that crossed Owen's face was warm and genuine. "Partners, then." "Partners," she agreed, and felt the words settle around her heart like a promise. The land purchase went through in mid-August. Owen hired 2 men after careful vetting. A weathered older cowboy named Jack who had worked ranches across Montana and came with solid references, and a younger man called Tommy who was green but eager and willing to learn. Both proved to be hard workers and decent men, and they settled into the rhythm of ranch life without trouble. The operation expanded quickly. More cattle, more horses, more land to manage. Theresa found herself cooking for 4 instead of 2, managing a larger household, coordinating work schedules, and handling the financial records Owen asked her to maintain. The work was constant and demanding, but she thrived on it. This was what she had been born to do, and she was doing it well. She also found herself spending more time alone with Owen, as Jack and Tommy took on the daily ranch work that had previously occupied his every waking hour. They rode the property together, planning improvements and discussing strategy. They worked side by side in the office Owen had set up in his house, going over accounts and planning purchases. And they talked, long conversations that ranged far beyond ranch business. Theresa learned that Owen read everything he could get his hands on, that he had a dry wit that caught her by surprise, that he loved this land with a fierce passion born of having lost everything once before. She learned that he was scrupulously honest in all his dealings, that he treated everyone from the bank president to the stable boy with the same courtesy, that he had a vision of building something lasting and good. And she learned that she was falling in love with him, helplessly and completely, in a way that both terrified and exhilarated her. She tried to hide it, tried to maintain the professional distance appropriate to their partnership. But it was hard when every conversation revealed some new facet of his character that drew her closer. Hard when his rare smiles felt like gifts specifically for her. Hard when she caught him looking at her sometimes with an expression she could not quite read, but that made her breath catch in her throat. The autumn roundup was controlled chaos. 2 weeks of dawn to dark work gathering and sorting cattle, separating those to sell from those to keep through winter. Theresa worked as hard as any of the men, riding fence lines, helping with the sorting, cooking massive meals to keep everyone fed. Owen was everywhere at once, directing operations, working alongside his hands, pushing himself to exhaustion. The night after they finally shipped the sale cattle, Owen declared a celebration. They had done well, better than his projections. The ranch was on solid financial footing with money in the bank and a successful season behind them. Jack and Tommy headed into town for their celebration. Owen and Theresa remained at the ranch, too tired for the ride and content with quieter festivities. She cooked a special meal, using some of the supplies Owen had bought from the profits, real coffee, canned peaches, a precious store of sugar. They ate on the porch as the first hints of autumn crisp touched the evening air. "We did it," Owen said, raising his coffee cup in a toast. "A successful season. The ranch is growing exactly as planned. We make a good team, Theresa." "We do," she agreed, touching her cup to his. Though we felt significant, weighted with meanings neither of them spoke aloud, they sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge. Then Owen said quietly, "I have been thinking." "About what?" "About the future. About what I want this ranch to be." He set down his cup, his expression thoughtful. "When I started this place, it was just about survival, rebuilding what I lost, proving I could make it on my own. But it has become more than that. It has become about building something lasting, a legacy maybe, something that matters." "You are well on your way to doing that," Theresa said. "This ranch will be here long after both of us. Maybe, if things go according to plan." He turned to look at her. "But a ranch like this, it should be a family operation. Not just hired hands, but family. People who have a real stake in its future." Theresa's heart began to beat faster. "What are you saying, Owen?" He stood, walked to the porch railing, and stood there for a moment with his back to her. When he spoke, his voice was careful, controlled. "I am saying that over the past 4 months, you have become essential to this ranch and to my life. I am saying that I look forward to our conversations more than just about anything else in my day. I am saying that when I think about the future, you are in it, not as an employee or even a partner, but as something more." Theresa rose, her legs unsteady, her entire body trembling. "Owen, I cannot afford to misunderstand you. Please be clear." He turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw everything she had been afraid to hope for. "I am in love with you, Theresa. I think I have been for a while now, but I did not want to presume. You came here needing help, and I did not want you to feel obligated or pressured. But I cannot keep it to myself anymore. I love you. I love your strength and your intelligence and your determination. I love the way you throw yourself into everything you do. I love how you have made this ranch into a real home instead of just a place I work." Joy burst through her chest like sunrise. "Owen, I have loved you for months. I was terrified you did not feel the same way, that I would ruin everything by wanting more than you were willing to give." His face transformed with a smile that was pure happiness. "You love me, completely, utterly. I think I started falling that first night when you offered to help a stranger for no reason except that it was right. And every day since then, I have loved you more." He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and took her hands in his. His grip was warm and strong and exactly right. "Theresa Vance, I know we have not known each other long by some standards, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. Will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my true partner in all things, and help me build a life worth living?" Tears spilled down her cheeks, happy tears this time. "Yes, yes, Owen, I will marry you." He pulled her close and kissed her, gentle at first and then deeper, with all the pent-up longing of months of restraint. Theresa wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she laughed with pure joy. "I love you," she said again, needing to hear the words aloud now that she could finally say them freely. "I love you too," Owen replied and kissed her again. "We will do this right. A proper wedding as soon as we can arrange it. I want everyone to know you are my wife." "I do not need anything fancy," Theresa said. "Just you and a preacher and a legal marriage. You will have all that and more." "You deserve everything good, Theresa, and I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you have it." They stood on that porch wrapped in each other's arms until the night grew cold, making plans and promises, building their future in words and dreams. And when Theresa finally returned to her cabin that night, it was with Owen's kiss still warm on her lips and a ring he had pressed into her hand. His mother's ring, saved from the loss of the Wyoming ranch and kept safe until the day he found someone worthy to wear it. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in the nearby town of Whitehall, Montana. It was a simple ceremony attended by Jack and Tommy, a few townspeople Owen had befriended, and the kindly minister who had served the community for 20 years. Theresa wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved, and carried wildflowers Owen had picked that morning. Owen wore his best suit and could not stop smiling. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Owen kissed her in front of God and witnesses, Theresa felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she was meant to be. This was the life she was meant to live. Everything that had been taken from her had led to this moment, and she could not find it in herself to regret the path, however painful, that had brought her here. They held a simple celebration at the ranch, and Jack toasted them with genuine warmth. To the boss and his bride, "May you have many years of happiness and a passel of kids to inherit this fine ranch you are building." "Here, here," Tommy added, grinning. That night, Theresa moved her belongings from the cabin into the main house, into Owen's room, into their room. She became his wife in truth as well as name, and discovered that the passion she had sensed beneath his controlled exterior was real and powerful and matched her own. They came together with love and desire, and the profound relief of people who had found their perfect match against all odds. In the weeks that followed, they settled into married life with the same easy partnership that had characterized their working relationship. Theresa was no longer just helping run the ranch. She was co-owner in truth, her name added to the property deed as Owen's wedding gift to her. Everything he owned he shared freely, and she did the same. The ranch continued to prosper. They built a larger barn the following spring, expanded the herd again, and acquired more horses for breeding stock. Owen's reputation as an honest dealer spread, and buyers sought out his cattle specifically. The profits grew, and they reinvested carefully, always building for the future. Theresa threw herself into ranch life with renewed energy. She expanded the garden to truly impressive proportions, selling the excess produce in town for extra income. She learned to break horses, a skill Owen taught her patiently, and discovered she had a natural talent for it. Together, they began to breed working ranch horses that other ranchers sought eagerly. Their first year of marriage passed in a blur of hard work and deep happiness. Theresa had never imagined she could be so content, so fulfilled. Every morning she woke beside the man she loved, and every night she fell asleep in his arms. They worked together, planned together, dreamed together. It was everything a marriage should be. The only shadow came from the knowledge that the Montana Trust and Lending Company still operated with impunity, still foreclosed on properties using falsified records, still stole from honest people who had no recourse. The same banker, Hargrove, still collected his fees and commissions from the misery of others. Owen saw how it ate at Theresa, the injustice of it. He shared her anger but counseled patience. "We cannot take on the whole banking system," he said one night as they discussed the latest foreclosure they had heard about in town. "We do not have that kind of power." "I know," Theresa said, frustration sharp in her voice. "But it is wrong. Someone should stop them." "Agreed. But it has to be done legally, or we risk losing everything we have built. We need proof of their fraud, and we need someone in authority willing to act on it. Who would believe us over a powerful bank? The right territorial official might, if we could provide evidence. But we would need documentation, multiple cases, proof of a pattern." Owen pulled her close. "I promise you, if an opportunity arises to bring them to justice, I will take it, but I will not risk you or our ranch on a crusade that might fail." Theresa knew he was right, but the knowledge did nothing to ease her anger at injustice. She had to content herself with living well, building a life that proved the bankers had not destroyed her. It was not the vengeance she wanted, but it was something. In the spring of their second year of marriage, Theresa discovered she was pregnant. The realization came with joy and terror in equal measure. She had lost her mother young and had no female relatives to guide her through this. But Owen's happiness when she told him eased her fears. "We are having a baby," he said, wonder in his voice. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "A child, our child. Are you happy?" Theresa asked, suddenly needing reassurance. "Happy does not begin to cover it." He kissed her softly. "Terrified, too, if I am honest. But mostly happy. We are going to be parents." The pregnancy progressed well, and Theresa refused to slow down despite Owen's worried insistence that she rest more. She was pregnant, not sick, she insisted, and continued working the ranch alongside him until her growing belly made riding impractical. The local midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Henderson, checked on her regularly and pronounced everything healthy and normal. Owen prepared the house as if royalty was coming, building a beautiful cradle by hand, making sure they had everything a baby might need. On a cold November night, 3 days before Thanksgiving, Theresa went into labor. Owen rode to fetch Mrs. Henderson while Jack stayed with Theresa, awkward but willing to help. The labor was long and difficult, testing Theresa's strength to its limits, but she endured. And finally, as dawn broke over the mountains, she gave birth to a healthy, squalling baby boy. Owen wept when Mrs. Henderson placed the baby in his arms. "A son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Theresa, we have a son." "We do," she agreed, exhausted but happier than she had ever been. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names but never settled on anything. Now, looking at their child, Owen said, "Robert, after my father, Robert James Pierce, if that is all right with you." "It is perfect," Theresa said. "Robert James, our Bobby." The baby thrived, and so did their family. Parenthood transformed them both. Owen became even more protective, more determined to build security for their family. Theresa discovered reserves of patience and love she had not known she possessed. And Bobby grew, healthy and happy, surrounded by love and the wide Montana sky. When Bobby was 6 months old, Owen came home from town with news that made Theresa's heart race. The territorial authorities are investigating the Montana Trust and Lending Company. Apparently, a lawyer in Helena has been collecting evidence of fraud for the past year. They have cases, lots of them, including yours. Theresa set down the bread dough she had been kneading. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I spoke to the sheriff. He said they are building a case and plan to file charges. They want victims to come forward with their documentation." Owen pulled her into his arms. "This is it, Theresa. This is our chance to get justice." They traveled to Helena the following week, leaving Bobby with Mrs. Henderson. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed man named Garrison, listened to Theresa's story and examined the payment receipts she had kept. His smile was grim but satisfied. "Your case is exactly what we need. Clear documentation, obvious fraud. With your testimony and these records, we can prove the pattern." He looked at them both seriously. "This will not be easy. The bank has powerful friends. But we have the law on our side, and we have enough evidence now to make charges stick." "What do you need from us?" Owen asked. "Your testimony in court when the time comes, and permission to include your case in our filing. Nothing more than that." "You have it," Theresa said firmly. "Whatever it takes to stop them from doing this to anyone else." The trial took place the following spring. Theresa and Owen traveled to Helena and testified, along with more than 20 other victims of the Montana Trust and Lending Company's fraud. The evidence was overwhelming. Falsified ledgers, forged signatures, a systematic pattern of theft disguised as legal foreclosure. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. They found the bank officials guilty on all counts. Hargrove and his superiors were sentenced to prison. The bank itself was ordered to pay restitution to all victims and had its charter revoked. Sitting in that courtroom, listening to the verdict, Theresa felt a weight lift from her soul that she had not even fully realized she had been carrying. Justice. Real justice, legally obtained and properly served. It would not bring back her family's farm, but it stopped the people who had stolen it from stealing from anyone else. More than that, the court ordered restitution. 6 months after the trial, Theresa and Owen received a settlement payment equal to the value of her family's farm plus damages. It was more money than they had expected, a significant sum that could change their future. They discussed long into the night what to do with it. Finally, Owen said, "It is your money from your family's land. You should decide." Theresa thought of her parents, of the farm they had built with such love and effort. "I want to buy more land, expand our ranch even further, build something so big and so secure that no bank could ever threaten it. Something we can pass down to Bobby and any other children we might have. A legacy that honors my parents by being everything they dreamed of and more." Owen smiled. "Then, that is what we will do." They purchased an additional 600 acres bordering their eastern property line, land that included a beautiful spring-fed lake and some of the best grazing in the valley. The ranch now totaled more than 1,300 acres, one of the largest operations in the region. They hired 3 more hands, built a second barn, and expanded the herd to more than 600 cattle and 50 horses. The ranch became known throughout Montana as one of the best-run and most successful operations in the territory. Owen and Theresa's partnership, both personal and professional, was the foundation of that success. They worked together in perfect synchronicity, each bringing skills and strengths that complemented the other. Bobby grew into a lively, curious toddler who followed his father everywhere and charmed everyone he met. When he was 2, Theresa discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. She gave birth to a daughter in late summer, a beautiful baby girl they named Clara after Theresa's mother. Their family was growing, their ranch was thriving, and their love continued to deepen. Theresa sometimes thought back to that terrible day when she had sat on her trunk by the roadside. Her entire world collapsed around her, and marveled at how far she had come. Every hardship had led her here, to this life, to this man, to this family. She could not quite bring herself to be grateful for the injustice she had suffered, but she could be grateful for where it had ultimately led. The years passed in the way years do on a working ranch, each season bringing its own challenges and rewards. Bobby grew into a capable young boy who could ride before he could properly raid, who loved the ranch with the same passion as his parents. Clara became a bright, determined little girl who insisted on doing everything her older brother did and usually succeeded. Theresa and Owen added 2 more children to their family over the next years, another boy they named Daniel, and finally a second daughter, Lucy. The house rang with childish laughter and occasional tears, with the controlled chaos of a large family. Owen built additions to accommodate everyone, and the ranch hands became like uncles to the children. Jack remained with them for 15 years before age and arthritis forced him into retirement. Owen set him up in a small house in town and made sure he wanted for nothing. Tommy stayed on and eventually became foreman, a trusted right hand who managed the day-to-day operations with skill and dedication. Other hands came and went, but the core of the operation remained solid. The ranch continued to prosper beyond their wildest early dreams. They weathered hard winters and dry summers, managed prairie fires and cattle disease, survived the economic panics that swept the nation in the late 1800s. Through it all, their partnership held strong. Owen and Theresa made decisions together, faced challenges together, celebrated successes together. Their love, which had begun in shared adversity and mutual respect, grew into something deep and abiding. They knew each other completely, all the strengths and weaknesses, all the hopes and fears. They fought sometimes, as any couple did, but they fought fair and always made up. The passion that had drawn them together never faded, and they remained devoted to each other in every way. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Owen surprised Theresa with a gift. He led her to the ridge overlooking the ranch, where they had first seen it together all those years ago. But now, the valley held so much more than it had that night. Fences and buildings, herds of cattle and horses, fields and gardens. 20 years of hard work made visible in acres and prosperity. "When I brought you here that first night, I never imagined any of this," Owen said, his arm around her waist. "I thought I was offering you a place to work and sleep, nothing more. I had no idea I was bringing home the woman who would become my entire world." Theresa leaned into him, as comfortable with his touch now as she had been nervous about it then. "I sat on my trunk that day thinking my life was over. I had no idea it was just beginning. We have built something amazing together," Owen continued. "This ranch, our family, our life. And I want to make sure it is all protected, no matter what happens." He handed her a folder. Inside were legal documents transferring full ownership of the entire ranch to both of them, equally, with provisions ensuring that if anything happened to either of them, the survivor would retain complete control. Below that was a will, carefully constructed, that divided the ranch equally among their children upon both parents' deaths. "Everything we have built, it is ours together," Owen said. "Not mine, not yours, ours. And I want that reflected in law, not just in our hearts." Tears pricked Theresa's eyes. After all these years, he could still surprise her with his thoughtfulness. "Thank you, though I have no intention of anything happening to either of us for a very long time." "Agreed. We have grandchildren to meet and a ranch to run." He pulled her closer. "But I wanted you to know, officially and legally, that everything I have is yours. Has been from the moment I realized I loved you and will be until the day I die." "I love you," Theresa said simply. "More now than even on the day we married, if that is possible." "It is possible," Owen replied. "Because I feel the same way." They stood there watching the sun set over their land, their life, their legacy, and Theresa felt a profound sense of peace. She had lost everything once, had it stolen by greedy men who saw people as nothing more than numbers in a ledger. But from that loss had come something far greater than what was taken. She had found love, partnership, family, and purpose. She had built a life that mattered, that would continue long after she was gone. The ranch that had started as Owen's solitary struggle to rebuild after tragedy had become their shared triumph. Every fence line, every building, every head of cattle represented their combined efforts. And more than that, it represented their love, made tangible in wood and wire and wide Montana sky. Their children grew and flourished. Bobby, at 18, was already Owen's right hand in managing the cattle operation. Clara, 16 and beautiful, had her mother's head for figures and helped manage the ranch accounts. Daniel, 14, had discovered a talent for breaking horses that exceeded even his parents' skills. And Lucy, just 12, was the fearless one, riding as well as any of her siblings and never backing down from a challenge. Watching them, Theresa saw the future secured. These children would inherit the ranch and the values that had built it. Hard work, honest dealing, fair treatment of everyone regardless of station. They would carry forward the legacy that she and Owen had created from loss and determination and love. More than that, she saw in them the justice she had fought for. The Montana Trust and Lending Company had tried to destroy her, had stolen her family's legacy. But in doing so, they had inadvertently led her to Owen, and together they had built something far greater than her family's farm had ever been. The thieves had ultimately failed, because from their theft had grown something they could never destroy. As the years continued their steady march, Owen and Theresa gradually stepped back from the daily operation of the ranch, turning more responsibility over to Bobby and the other children. But they remained involved, offering guidance and wisdom gained from decades of experience. The ranch continued to thrive under the next generation's management, and Theresa took pride in seeing her children implement new ideas while respecting the foundation their parents had laid. The first grandchild arrived when Theresa was 52, Bobby's son, another Robert to carry on the family name. Holding that tiny baby, Theresa thought of her own parents, wished they could have seen this moment, this family, this legacy. She hoped they would have been proud. More grandchildren followed, until the ranch echoed with young voices in the way it had when her own children were small. The cycle continued, life renewing itself in each generation. Theresa taught her granddaughters to preserve food and manage a household, the same skills her mother had taught her. Owen taught his grandsons to rope and ride, to judge cattle and horse flesh, passing down the wisdom of a lifetime. On their 40th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a celebration attended by half the county. Friends, neighbors, business associates, and family gathered to honor the couple, who had become something of a legend in the region. The story of how they met, of Theresa losing everything and Owen offering her a fresh start, of their partnership and love building one of the finest ranches in Montana, had been told and retold until it had taken on mythic proportions. Standing before the crowd of well-wishers, Owen's arm around her waist in a gesture as natural as breathing, Theresa marveled at the journey they had taken together. 40 years. 4 children, 15 grandchildren at last count, and a ranch that sprawled across more than 2,000 acres after a final purchase 5 years back. But more than any of that, 40 years of love, of partnership, of facing life together and being stronger for it. "When I met this woman," Owen said in his brief speech, "I thought I was helping a stranger in need. I had no idea I was meeting my other half, the person who would make my life complete. Theresa, you have given me everything that matters. Thank you for 40 years of love, of partnership, of building something beautiful together. Here is to 40 more." Everyone laughed at that optimistic projection, but Theresa felt the truth behind the words. They would have as many years as God granted them, and she intended to treasure every single one. As they danced together that night, moving slowly to music played by local musicians, Theresa laid her head on Owen's chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart. This heart that had first moved with compassion for a stranger's plight, this heart that had opened to love her completely, this heart that had never wavered in its devotion through 4 decades of life's trials and joys. "I would do it all again," she said softly. "Lose the farm, sit on that trunk every hard moment, because it led me here to you, to this life." "I am glad you see it that way," Owen replied, his arms tightening around her. "But I still wish you had never had to suffer that injustice. You deserved better." "I got better. I got you." She lifted her head to meet his eyes. "We made something good from something terrible. That matters more than the terrible thing itself." They danced on, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, by friends and neighbors, by the physical evidence of a life well lived and love well shared. The ranch sprawled out around them in the darkness, solid and real and enduring. Their legacy, built from loss and determination, and a chance meeting on a darkening road. Years continued to pass with increasing speed, the way they do as one ages. Theresa and Owen both moved more slowly now, their joints protesting the demands of decades of hard physical work. But they remained active, still riding out to check fence lines when the weather was good, still involved in the major decisions affecting the ranch, still devoted to each other and the life they had built. On a bright spring morning in their 52nd year of marriage, Owen did not wake up. Theresa found him lying peacefully in their bed, looking as if he had simply drifted from sleep to death without struggle or pain. The doctor confirmed it. His heart had simply stopped during the night. He had died in his sleep, quickly and without suffering, in the home he had built, beside the woman he loved. The grief was crushing. 52 years together, and still it was not enough. Theresa wanted more time, decades more, an eternity. But she had learned long ago that wanting did not make things so. Owen was gone, and she had to find a way to continue without him. The funeral drew people from across Montana and beyond. Owen had been respected throughout the territory, known for his fairness and integrity. People came to pay their respects and to support the family he left behind. Theresa stood straight and dry-eyed through the service, though inside she felt shattered. Her children surrounded her, their presence a comfort and a reminder that Owen lived on in them and their children. She did not fall apart. Owen would not have wanted that, and she had never been the kind of woman to collapse under hardship. She grieved deeply, privately, in the quiet moments, but she also continued living, because that was what he would have expected. The ranch continued operating smoothly under Bobby's management, exactly as Owen had planned. Theresa remained involved, but increasingly let her children make the decisions. She spent her time with her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing down stories of Owen and their life together, making sure his memory lived on. She lived another 8 years after Owen's death, years that were bittersweet. She missed him constantly, felt the absence of his presence like a missing limb. But she also found joy in her family, in watching the ranch continue to thrive, in seeing the legacy they had built together endure and grow. On an autumn evening much like the one when Owen had first brought her to the ranch, Theresa sat on the porch of the main house watching the sun set over the land they had built together. She was surrounded by 3 generations of family, all the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried forward the life she and Owen had created. She thought about that young woman who had sat on a trunk by the roadside, everything she owned in that single container, her entire world destroyed by greed and injustice. She thought about the young man who had stopped to help a stranger, offering her a fresh beginning when she had nothing left. She thought about the love that had grown between them, unexpected and transformative, the foundation of everything that came after. It had been a good life. Hard sometimes, painful at moments, but fundamentally good. She had loved deeply and been deeply loved in return. She had raised children who were capable and good-hearted. She had built something lasting, something that would endure long after she was gone. As the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Theresa felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. She had lived well, loved well, and left a legacy that mattered. Everything else, including the injustice that had started it all, faded to insignificance against those truths. That night, Theresa went to sleep in the room she had shared with Owen for more than half a century, surrounded by memories and love. Like Owen, she drifted peacefully from sleep to death, her heart simply stopping in the night. She died as she had lived the second half of her life, peacefully in the home she and Owen had built, surrounded by evidence of a life well lived and love well shared. The ranch continued, passed down to Bobby and then to his children, carrying forward through the generations. The story of its founding became family legend, told and retold until Theresa and Owen became almost mythic figures to their descendants. But always at the core of the story were the essential truths: loss met with compassion, hardship overcome through partnership, love building something that endured. The Montana Trust and Lending Company was long forgotten, its name erased from history by the justice that had destroyed it. But the ranch Theresa and Owen had built together stood solid and real, a living testament to the power of honest work, fair dealing, and love strong enough to transform loss into triumph. In the end, that was the real victory. Not revenge against those who had wronged her, though that had come. Not the material success, though that was real and significant. The victory was the life she had built from ruins, the love she had found in the darkest moment, the family and legacy that endured. Theresa Vance Pierce had lost everything to crooked bankers, but a cowboy named Owen Pierce had given her acres and a fresh beginning. And from that beginning, she had built a life beyond anything she could have imagined on that darkening road so many years ago. That was the story her descendants told, generation after generation, as they worked the land and built their own lives on the foundation Theresa and Owen had laid. A story of injustice overcome, of compassion rewarded, of love transforming everything it touched. A story worth remembering, worth passing down, worth living up to. And in the end, that was the most fitting legacy of all.